Hello, hello. Welcome to Backchannel. Anthony, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi, Rob.
It's Riyadh.
Oh, hi, Riyadh.
Hi. Hi. And hello to everyone out there. I'm in the backstage just trying to get this show live for everyone today.
Well, I think we sorted out all of our problems, so...
Okay, so I can get out of here.
you can go back to running the business, running the company.
Okay.
But thank you for your help.
Yeah, good seeing you. I will talk to you later.
All right, bye for now. That was Riyadh. I'm Anthony, and this is Backchannel. It's the 11th of February, which is, I think it's Super Bowl weekend. Yes, it is. So if you are the type of person like me who is obsessed with Super Bowl, I'm only kidding, then just, stick around because we're going to talk about it a little bit later as well. Okay, let's see what we've got happening today because, as you know, we spend a couple of hours looking at the news together. We're going to look at Marjorie Taylor Greene on a hot streak of stupidity, according to the Daily Beast. We'll look into what she's been up to. We've got Black History Month to consider as well. For every famous woman in flight, there's sadly countless others whose names are not nearly as well known, including Mae Jemison, the first black woman in space, in 1992 as an astronaut on the second launch of the Space Shuttle Endeavour. So we've got that to look at as well. We've also going to look through the morning papers as well and find out what's happening, kind of around the United States. See where we're at, Let's find out exactly who's doing what and where. There's lots of ways you can get in touch, of course. Don't forget, you can just go to your Echo Show. If you're watching on an Echo Show device, then just jump on in the usual way and... you can wake it up, say, and then your message. That's kind of how it works. You can also go to YouTube and follow the show on YouTube, and you're very welcome, in addition to both of those ways, to type on our web chat facility at backchannel.tv. That's backchannel.tv. So let's jump straight into the morning papers this morning. We're going to go to the Times Union first for this Friday. I can't believe it's Friday. It's amazing. Let's see where we're at with Times Union. Here we go. I'm just putting it in a big window because this print is so small. It's like an eye test for me. FBI subpoenas county records is the story. It says federal grand jury subpoenas seeking a trove of materials from the Rensselaer County Board of Elections were served on the county on Tuesday, part of a widening FBI investigation examining the handling of absentee ballots in elections last year and in 2020. According to two people briefed on the matter. The subpoenas, which seek absentee ballot documents and communications of multiple county officials, arrived 5 days after FBI agents seized the mobile phones of county operators Richard Christ and Jim Gordon, the county's director of purchasing and a political ally of county executive Steve McLaughlin. So I think they're starting to realize that this entire election fraud conspiracy was a joined-up conspiracy. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't just a phrase that Trump kind of said out loud, that actually this was an organized conspiracy right across the US. And it had a whole bunch of people involved at every level. And so clearly the subpoena is now heading towards people who were involved, but we had not heard of them before. Until now. Also, from hospital room to court, arraignment of man shot by police halted as lawyer argues he was too ill. I'm not seeing anybody here on my dashboard, so that's why I can't say hello to anybody. But let me start it up again and see if it makes a difference. Let's see, what have we got here? Oh, there we go. Emily and Finn, welcome. Now I can see you guys. Thank you very much for spending your morning with Backchannel, as it were. See where you guys are. Doesn't say. Oh, it doesn't say, but maybe you can let me know. Our systems are all a little bit crazy this morning, but we're working on it, I'm working on it. I'm like a work in progress, just like constantly working on myself. And this morning is a perfect example of that. Let's go to the Press and Sun Bulletin next as we scoot around the US. This is from Binghamton, New York. They lead with sticker shock. Rising natural gas prices fuel dramatic spikes in electric bills. What is natural gas anyway? I tell you what natural gas is. It's methane. It's just methane. They called it natural gas to make people think that it was more carbon friendly, but it isn't. It's methane. It says a cruel winter has arrived for New York electric customers who were stunned recently when exorbitant hikes showed up in their electric bills and rocked homeowners like Benita Aguila Delgado of Brewster. Her total bill doubled in February to close to $1,000, with the supply cost of electricity skyrocketing 150%, in just 1 month. I feel terrible, I feel assaulted, she said. She's a caseworker at the Connecticut Institute for Refugees and Immigrants. They should let you know in advance. No, they shouldn't let you know in advance. They shouldn't do it. They shouldn't be allowed to do it. Because it's going to get to the point where everybody who is accessing energy will not be able to afford their energy bills. And it'll become, if it hasn't already, it's going to become a kind of federal crisis. You know? Not just a state crisis. This is New York State, but it's going to be a federal crisis. Delgado, who warms her home with electric heat, is among those with the highest electric bills, but those who heat with fuel are feeling a double whammy. First came the sky-high electric bill, then came another fuel oil delivery, with oil prices up 42% to a statewide average of almost $4 a gallon. The rapid rise in energy prices comes as New Yorkers struggle to pay their utility bills. State political leaders look for answers, and New York utilities say they are hamstrung by rising commodity prices over which they have no control. The prices this winter are among the highest in recent years and come a year after the pandemic-induced economic slowdown sent fossil fuel prices down due to slackened demand. Now the economic revival has supercharged the economy, but the energy sector has not been able to respond to the demand. I mean, this is effectively like holding people to ransom, isn't it? Like, this is holding the public to ransom. And this is caused by racketeering and profiteering in the energy sector, not controlled by the government. And in addition to that, you have, it seems crazy, you have the oil sector in the Middle East holding the price of a barrel of oil to ransom as well, right? So that fluctuates. Biden tried to do something about it by going into the fuel reserve, which brought the prices down a little. But the reality is that we are at the mercy of international fuel trade. And the people who pay the price are the people at home. And I've been saying to people for ages, energy at home is going to go up. So work out a way that you could do less. What I do, because it's been a bit cold during the winter here, so I bought a couple of oil heaters. They were about $60 each. And they have oil in them, and they plug into the electricity, and they get very hot, and they use very little electricity, and you only need to heat the room that you're in. Still, it drives me crazy that people are heating an entire home. Just heat the room that you're in. Move the heater around the house if necessary. But I just get the feeling that we have taken energy for granted for so long that we are trained to think that it's okay to waste it. And then when the bills go up, we complain. I'm not saying it's our fault. I'm just saying that we, for years, have taken energy prices for granted. And that's why we've got a climate crisis. It is our fault. Just turn it on whenever we think. And of course, if you go back like years ago to kind of, wartime when energy was rationed, then people were more thoughtful then. And you hear stories of, people was like, oh, well, I grew up in a cold house. Well, yeah, you did, for a reason, because it was impossible to pay for, the price of energy back then. Okay, let's move on. New York clamps down on businesses gifting marijuana is the headline. It says, while New York works on launching a legal market for recreational marijuana, some entrepreneurs have jumped into a legal gray area by saying they're not selling pot, but giving it away. Such a good idea. While people buy something else. Now the state is saying that they've jumped the gun and need to stop. The Office of Cannabis Management said that it sends letters to more than 24 enterprises it suspects of illegally selling weed, telling them to stop or face fines, potential criminal charges, and risk to their prospects of getting a license once they are available. It says New York State is building a legal, regulated cannabis market that will ensure products are tested and safe for consumers. I mean, I think I said this yesterday. To me, just legalize marijuana across the board, I think considering people are struggling so much, marijuana is relatively cheap, you can even grow it at home. The reality is that life in the current crisis, with all of the insanity and the division and the politics and the climate, smoking a little weed is just going to make life a little easier for a whole lot of people. Certainly worked here in California. You don't see people complaining. It's just California. So, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I get the feeling that I think we're going to get to a point where eventually the whole of the US will accept that marijuana is a thing, is an acceptable form of recreation rather than being, something that is frowned upon or looked at as being, illegal in some way. You know what I mean by that, don't you? Okay, let's move on. Let's see what we have here. What is next? Strawberry Fest is returning. I've been trying to work, maybe you can help me with this. I've been trying to work out how you keep strawberries fresh. Now, that punnet that they come in, firstly, most people I talk to don't realize it's called a punnet, but apparently it is. The box is the weight. A punnet is a weight. It's a measure of weight. And now, I have been transferring strawberries into a sealed container in the hope that it will keep them more fresh, because the punnet holder, the plastic thing that it comes in, has got holes in it, and I worry that thing is, letting in too much oxygen, which is oxygenizing it, and consequently, you end up in a situation. But now I'm thinking, well, if I'm putting them into a sealed container, then that sealed container is not letting anything in, and they're potentially more likely to go rotten. Maybe you have advice on this. I don't know. Michael's joined us as well. Thank you, Michael. Stacey's here, who's having pizza and chips and goldfish today. Well, actual goldfish? I mean, that's the food crisis, There's no food around, so people have to eat goldfish. I know what it is, Carla. Of course, I buy them by the bucket load for my children, who eat them like they're goldfish. It would be a worrying thing if there was such a, the climate crisis had caused such a shortage in the fish supply that we were actually having to eat real goldfish. There's not a lot of meat on those bones. In fact, I don't think there's any meat, is there? Anyway, sweet times are returning to Owego after a 2-year absence due to COVID-19. Owego's iconic Strawberry Festival is coming back to the village's historic downtown this spring. The 40th Strawberry Jubilee Festival will take place between the 17th and 18th of June, hosted by the historic Owego Marketplace. Past festivals have attracted hundreds of vendors and as many as 20,000 visitors. Both the 2020 and 2021 festivals were cancelled. Interesting. So, I think that's all on the Press and Sun Bulletin. Should we move on to something else? Let's go to the Buffalo News now. Buffalo soldier. Police say 17-year-old in custody after another high school stabbing incident. Oh, man. Schools, I mean, let me tell you something. This is quite crazy. I was talking to my daughter yesterday, she's 6, about what she was doing at school. And I asked her, she said, we have so many drills at school, because I'm kind of interested, right? I said, well, what kind of drills do you have? She said, well, we do a fire drill. And I was like, yeah, okay. And then she said, we do an earthquake drill, because I was talking about earthquakes, because we had a little earthquake here yesterday, just at a 3.8, and it shook me, and I enjoyed it enormously. Whenever there's an earthquake in Los Angeles, I enjoy it because I know that it's another day where the big one has not come and taken us all, So I was talking to her about the earthquake, and she said, we do earthquake drill. And she said, we also do fire drill. I was like, great. And what other drills do you do? And she said, we do villain drill. They call it villain drill. Now, you and I know that is probably, in addition to just a general villain, it could also be a school shooter or other, it doesn't really happen so much in elementary schools, but they drill them anyway, quite rightly. And I said, well, can you tell me what happens with villain drill? And she explained what happens, about how all the kids, no matter where they are in the school, they all have to go as quickly as possible to the nearest classroom. It doesn't matter which classroom. And the teachers say, in. And she was explaining this to me. And I'm like, I've got a 6-year-old explaining to me how they rehearse for some kind of active shooter drill, or villain drill, as they call it. And then she said, and then the principal goes out, and it's his job to go and talk to the villain. She told me this. It's the principal's job to go and talk to the villain and find out what he's doing there. And I was like, wow, this is quite something. This is America in 2022. My 6-year-old daughter doing villain drill. So to read that a 17-year-old is in custody. This is a stabbing incident. A 14-year-old boy was stabbed and a security guard was shot. Buffalo police tweeted the news around 10:49 last night. Investigation is still ongoing. 24 hours after the incident that drew dozens of police and had worried parents waiting for hours for their children who were locked inside. A clearer picture began to emerge of what took place on Wednesday afternoon in the parking lot outside Elmwood Avenue School. So let's go to the, what else is on the Buffalo News? Anti-Mandate Convoy is heading to Peace Bridge. Yes, nobody is threatening gridlock or shutting down the US-Canada border as groups are in Ottawa at the northern crossings over the past few days. It says local and out-of-town protesters are nevertheless heading for Buffalo and the Peace Bridge this weekend to show support for the growing movement against COVID-19 mandates started by Canadian truckers. It says this is bigger than masks or vaccinations, said Penny Fay, who's helping to organise a convoy to save America from Nashville to Buffalo this weekend. It's about trying to control you and taking away your freedoms. Now, this is very interesting to me because, this convoy at the Canada border started off as a regular protest, then it gained momentum and it became more of a kind of right-wing movement of people refusing to get vaccinated for all of their own reasons. And then as time went on, it became clear that word was spreading into the US that this would be a good way to cause trouble, and it becomes this kind of freedom march. And it's being said that the right-wing movement is trying to do this to sabotage Joe Biden's economy. And you look at a story like this and you're like, they actually would do this. They actually would do. I mean, they've already sabotaged democracy, don't seem to care about that. So sabotaging the economy just to make a political point seems normal. They say organizers hope to form another procession from Penn Station in Manhattan to the Peace Bridge that will combine with local rallies and demonstrations with speakers on Saturday and Sunday in Patsol Park near the bridge entrance. Those behind the effort have no idea how many will show up, but emphasize they have no plans to enter the international span, shut it down, or disrupt traffic. They said, our plan is just a peaceful protest by a bunch of mama bears and papa bears. Yeah, well, everybody is somebody's daughter or father or son. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. I have very differing views on this because, in my opinion, freedom is working in a society where everybody does their bit. This pandemic is not going to go away unless everybody does their bit. We've been having this conversation for 2 years now. Like, why are we still having this conversation? We'll talk about this in some more detail later, because thousands of New York staff are losing their jobs over these vaccine mandates as well. They say it's an effort to show Canada we support them if other groups show we want a peaceful demonstration, and no problems. Faye said her convoy, which is gaining attention on social media, will depart suburban Nashville at 8 a.m. on Saturday, make several stops along the way, and arrive in Buffalo before midnight. They plan a noontime freedom party near the Peace Bridge on Sunday. A similar group leaves Midtown Manhattan on Friday, will join Saturday's slow roll through downtown Buffalo, organized by local opponents of COVID-19 mandates. Marcella Picone, an outspoken Buffalo activist since pandemic restrictions began in 2020, said her group will sponsor a parade of vehicles originating in the former Gander Mountain. Gander's that amazing place in Newfoundland. Do you remember? We've talked about that before. It's where the airplanes land when they need to in an emergency over the Atlantic. With plans to pass Buffalo City Hall, the Rath County office building, the downtown offices of federal representatives, and finally at Patsol Park, where several speakers are set to address the crowd. She said local groups such as Families are essential. The Constitutional Coalition and Rolling Patriots are involved. I mean, what do you think about this? Do you know, I mean, I keep saying this, I'm all for freedom, but freedom when there's a pandemic becomes a complicated issue. Freedom when there's no pandemic is much easier to qualify. It's much easier to celebrate. It's much easier to be part of. But freedom during a pandemic is a completely different thing. So, what are we talking about here? I just get the feeling that people are so kind of riled up right now about stuff that they're like, oh, they're like, I don't know. I just feel like we have almost lost sight of the argument. That's what I'm saying. We've lost sight of the argument. The argument should be that we are all going through this together and we all want to get out of it together. That should be the conversation. Like, what we have to do to get out of this together. But it's not. It's become divided politically in such a way that people are now kind of losing the plot. I think people are protesting now and not even realizing why they're protesting. Sunny's message, thank you, Sunny. Nice to hear from you. Says, when your actions can impact the freedoms of others, freedom does get complicated. And he says, speaking of COVID, I've been lucky all throughout this pandemic so far, but I think I might have it. Going to go to the hospital later today to get checked out. Well, that's a good idea. Or if you can go to a drive-through testing center, that's probably a good idea. If you don't have any tests at home, if you think you've got it, rather than going into the hospital, if there is a drive-through testing facility, you don't have to get out the car, because obviously, if you're well enough, if you feel really ill, obviously go to the hospital. But I think if you've got symptoms, but you're okay, and you want to get tested, find a drive-through, and then you're not going to come into contact with other people. Your breathing is worrisome. Okay, go straight to the hospital. Literally straight to the hospital. Don't listen to me. Francine's just joined us. Zuo has joined us as well. Sunny's laughing. Appreciate you. Well done. Also on the front of the Buffalo News this morning, price of success Bills season ticket rising for 2022. This is the average charge going up 11% to $113 a game. This is the Buffalo Bills. The Bills said the average increase will be $11.57 per game, bringing the average price per ticket, including club and regular seats, to $113, an increase of 11% from 2021. They say the average cost of a general admission ticket will rise to $107.05, an increase of $9.84 per game. Wow, it's expensive to have a kind of football addiction, isn't it? It's expensive. I've only been to, I think, 2 football matches in my life. 2 in my life. One was an English team called Arsenal, and I was so completely offended by the racist chants of the crowd, I said, I will never come back to see this again. Literally, racist chants from the crowd. I mean, this was like 25 years ago, so I'm hoping that they've kind of got on top of that now. And then the other was a kind of a team called Wolverhampton Wanderers that my cousin supported, and I went to see them at their home stadium. And that was okay. Also a little bit racist, because it's in East London, even though the team is from the Midlands. For some reason, the stadium's in East London. Do you know why that is? Why are Wolves in East London when they're a Wolverhampton team? It's very strange. Never thought I'd be having this conversation, like actual sport. Isn't West Ham in East Ham? Oh yeah, they're in Stratford. That's right. But isn't West Ham at the old Olympic Stadium now? Isn't that where they moved? Yeah. I've been to the old Olympic Stadium. I went there for the Olympics. Yeah. GOP's censure fight exposes the party's deeper divide. It says more than a year after the 2020 election, Donald Trump's false claims of election fraud remain a destabilizing force for the Republican Party, dividing an activist base galvanized by a lie from elites in Washington who are hoping to hold the party together long enough to win back power in Congress in the upcoming midterm elections. The tension flared this week as Republicans were forced to either explain or denounce a party resolution characterizing the deadly events of January 6 as legitimate political discourse. But the episode was only a preview of the battles ahead, with a series of upcoming primary contests pitting candidates loyal to Trump against those who, to varying degrees, resist his distortions about the election. Do you think people who... I mean, look... You know, the leader of the Republicans in Congress, Kevin McCarthy, yesterday I saw him, they're trying to interview him. He never stands still for an interview, refuses to be interviewed because, these people don't feel accountable to the people. So they just refuse to be interviewed. So he's always running away. They're always asking him questions. He's running away. And he just refuses to accept, after saying that, originally that the insurrection was a violent insurrection. He's now not doing that anymore. This is the hypocrisy. It's like, can you not see that the Republicans are lying? Can you not see that? I mean, can you not see it? I'm not even saying this from a partisan perspective. They completely changed their story. The leader changed his story. It's all on tape. I mean, that's the tragedy of this. It's all on tape. Sonny says, yeah, legitimate political discourse comment really irritated me. He says, these people almost beat a policeman to death who was begging for his life, all over a big lie. And what I'm saying is, when a lie becomes a movement, people forget the original lie. Do you know what I mean? They kind of forget what it was all about. They're just so caught up in this movement. Steve, hello. Thank you for joining us. Bryn is with us as well. Welcome. Sonny says yes and sends a round of applause. Sonny, you're very welcome. Sonny is in Indiana. Isn't that wonderful? You're watching and typing. I see, so you've got Backchannel on your Echo Show device, but you're also typing on backchannel.tv. Is that right? I think so. You're all the screens. I mean, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I got 4 screens in front of me. You've probably got more than I have right now. Okay, next up, let's have a look here on the old newspaper front. Where did we get to? We got to Buffalo News. The Times. Okay, let's do that. For North Carolina. Times News for North Carolina. Let's get rid of that one. There we go. I'm into my new running order now, Carla. Just so you know, I'm into my new running order. We're back on track. How's your internet now? Is it wonderful? I really am the king of Mac. You just have to trust me. I'm like the king of... I like to... I like to fix people's computers from so far away without even touching them. Just with a few strokes of the text message. The unfortunate thing about being good at fixing other people's computers is that I end up getting messages from people I don't even know saying, oh, my friend's given me your number. Is there any way you can fix my computer? I'm like, no. No, I mean, if I know you, I would love to, if I'm free. The Times News this morning leads with a long, sweet history. It says Shirley and Al Kimino purchased Paul's Pastry Shop in Burlington in September, a few months before North Carolina food and retail businesses were rocked by shutdowns because of COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. And it says the sign at Paul's Pastry Shop has announced for decades that the business has been serving best donuts in town since 1942. But that's a lie, says the new owner, Al Camino. Well, sort of. Camino wholeheartedly stands behind the claim that his pastry shop has the best donuts, cookies, pies, scones, muffins, cakes, cannoli, brownies, and more. Now I'm getting hungry. But it was filling Burlington residents' sweet tooth cravings before 1942. The proof he found was a news story clipping in the newspaper saying Paul's Pastry Shop started in 1940 as Phil's Pastry Shop, about 2 doors down from Paul's current location on South Church Street. I do love a pastry shop story, don't you? And apparently you can trace it right back to the 1900s. Anyway, the point is, it's reopened now that the pandemia is, coming to an end. It's reopened, and the couple who now run it look very happy that they've got the best pastries in town, and they do look nice. I quite like an apple turnover. Are you familiar with the apple turnover? It looks like a big samosa, but it's flaky pastry with an apple filling. Love it. State Senate seeks bipartisan negotiation on district maps. It also says South Carolina's Senate leaders said on Wednesday that Republicans and Democrats in the chamber will work together on creating replacement redistricting maps after the state Supreme Court last week struck down plans arranged by the GOP. Republican Senate leader Phil Berger and Democratic leader Dan Blue released a statement indicating work in hopes of reaching a negotiated end product would occur privately between both parties' senators. Sonny says apple turnovers are great, but apple fritters are even better. Now, we need to be clear on what an apple fritter is here, because I don't want to get this wrong. Is the fritter the one that's kind of got more cinnamony stuff in it as well? Oh, Sonny said he won his Amazon Echo thanks to the Word of the Day quiz. Oh, that's fantastic. Well done. Well done. And he's got 3 screens in front of him. He has an Echo Show. And that's great. He won it last week. Well done. Yeah, we need to work out the difference between an apple turnover and an apple fritter, because I need to know. Brandy's just joined us. Hello, Brandy's in Washington. Wonderful. Thank you for joining Backchannel. It's 9:55 here on the West Coast, 12:55 Eastern. I'm Anthony. This is the Anthony Davis Show. We are discussing apple turnovers. I was going to say we are discussing the redistricting and redrawing of district maps, but the reality is we're now discussing apple fritters. He says it might have cinnamon seasoning, but the fritter itself is basically a deep-fried disc-shaped pastry. Oh, hang on a second. A fritter? I mean, this is very, there's a lot going on here. Now I'm really hungry. Stacey says you might want to try an apple crisps. I don't know about apple crisps. I tell you what I do like. When they take a muffin and they turn it into an apple cinnamon crumble muffin, right? Where the top of the muffin has got crumble on it, and there's pieces of apple and cinnamon, and it's like an apple cake, but with a hard crumble, like a crispy top, sugared. Now you're talking. That's what I'm talking about. Just saying. If you want to message me on the subject of redistricting or indeed apple fritters, then you can just wake up your Echo Show, say the word say, and then your message. Brandy says that's an apple crisp. Sonny says, I love talking about food with friends across the pond. Every time I mention biscuits and gravy, let's not even go there. And just so you know, I'm not across the pond. I'm on your side of the pond. I haven't been back to that side of the pond for a long time. Yeah. What's the other thing I really like? The cronut. Do you know the cronut? It's a mixture of a donut and a croissant, or croissant, as the Americans say. You know, it's a combined. So it's like a donut shape, but it's a croissant thing. But it's got the squidgy interior of a donut. It's wonderful. I'm in Los Angeles, Sonny. I'm in Los Angeles, California. Okay, anything else on the front? Oh, states get go-ahead to build EV charging stations. This is very interesting to me. It says Biden administration rolls out $5 billion plan. States are being given the go-ahead to build a nationwide network of electric vehicle charging stations that would place new or upgraded stations every 50 miles along interstate highways, part of the Biden administration's plan to spur widespread adoption of these zero-emissions cars. The administration on Thursday announced the availability of $5 billion in federal funds to states over 5 years under President Joe Biden's infrastructure law, stretching out a vision of seamless, climate-friendly car travel from coast to coast. It says under new requirements issued by the Transportation Department, states must submit plans to the federal government and begin construction this fall if they focus first on highway routes rather than neighborhoods and shopping centers that can allow people to take their electric vehicles long distances. Well, that is very interesting, isn't it? And it's very thoughtful if you think about it, because if you're pootling around town, you don't really use much electricity in an electric car because you have regenerative braking. So every time you're slowing down, it's charging the battery. But really, the only time you start to lose miles significantly and lose charge is when you go at high speed and there's no slowing down. All you're doing is draining the battery. So I think that's a very good idea. If I'm just driving around town and not taking the freeway, I don't really need to charge for like 2 weeks. But if I go long distance, it just drinks the battery. So really, you want to put the chargers on the freeway, the superchargers, you know, charge up super fast, carry on your journey. A friend of mine, Bobby, or Robert, has a really good YouTube channel that is dedicated solely to electric cars. It's called Fully Charged, obviously. And it is a really, really good kind of review site and I watch it all the time. And that's kind of how I kind of keep my hand in on what the new cars are. But I really feel like, as I've said on the show so many times now, if you're planning on getting a new car, whether it be a lease or a purchase or a used car, only buy an electric vehicle. Please. It's really not necessary to have a combustion engine these days. There are ways of doing it. Sonny says, I'm glad there is movement on this. It's going to take some time for us to transition. So having the infrastructure already there will make it easier. We really need to... I just think we need to get our heads around this, because it's not that difficult. I've been driving electric for 5 years. I haven't been to a gas station for 5 years. And when I drive past a gas station or I'll stop at one to buy cake, it just seems weird to me that people are like paying all this money for fuel, like actual like flammable fuel, that they're pouring liquid into their car and it sets alight, you know, it combusts, and that's how the car moves forward. It's just like, what are you doing? It's stupid. Should we do our news update in just a moment? Because it's 10 o'clock here on the West Coast. I also do a podcast called US News Update. It's a daily podcast. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. And it's just a chance for you to, in 2 minutes, just hear what's happening across the United States. So anyway, let's listen to it now. And you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
It's Friday, February 11. From the Volley Network, this is your daily US news update. I'm Anthony Davis. US consumer prices rose solidly in January, leading to the biggest annual increase in inflation in 4 years, fueling financial market speculation for a hefty 50 basis points interest rate hike from the Federal Reserve next month. The broad increase in prices reported by the Labor Department on Thursday was led by soaring costs for rents, electricity and food, and could keep more political pressure on President Joe Biden, whose popularity has been declining amid anxiety over the rising cost of living. High inflation, which has overshot the Fed's 2% target, could imperil Biden's economic agenda. Biden, in a statement, acknowledged the hardships American families are facing, but noted there are also signs where we will make it through this challenge. He was alluding to the unchanged reading in the prices of motor vehicles, one of the major drivers of inflation. The world economy is grappling with high inflation, caused by a shift in spending to goods from services during the COVID-19 pandemic. Trillions of dollars in pandemic relief fired up spending, which ran against capacity constraints, as the coronavirus sidelined workers needed to produce and move goods to consumers. Goods imports increased to a record high in December as ships offloaded their cargo after months of delays because of labor shortages at ports. Still, high inflation will persist for a while, reflecting the delayed impact of rising wages. Employers are boosting compensation as they compete for scarce workers. There were 10.9 million job openings at the end of December. Your daily US news update is part of the... To hear my live daily morning show, ask your Amazon Echo device to open Backchannel.
And we're back. There we go. That's the US News Update. It's your daily keep up with the world type podcast. You can download it wherever you get your podcasts. It's 3 minutes after 10. This is Backchannel on the 11th of February 2022. It's Super Bowl weekend here in LA, the SoFi Stadium. Is it Sophie or SoFi? I think it must be SoFi. It must be. Who says Sophie? Ridiculous. So there's obviously a lot of action happening there, and kind of exciting, you know. Let's go to the Akron Beacon Journal now. Councilman workplace isn't hostile, he says. Neil denies harassment accusation by 6 women. Yeah, if 6 women are accusing you of harassment, you harass them. You can deny it as much as you like. I actually think that there are a lot of men who don't even realize what sexual harassment is, or any kind of harassment, you know, just workplace harassment. They just actually have no idea what it is. They're just being themselves. You know, the former president was like that. He just doesn't realize that his actions are just really quite harassing. Seriously, it's like, guys, just like have some self-awareness, please. It says Akron City Councilman Russ Neal is denying allegations made by 6 women and substantiated by a human resources investigation that he created a hostile work environment. It says the investigation, which launched after a complaint was filed in October, concluded some of the allegations were deemed credible, noting a noticeable pattern of conduct of interrupting, talking over, dismissing and badgering female city employees and unprofessional communication, according to documents acquired by the Beacon Journal. City Council President Margot Somerville said a female employee approached her with concerns about interactions with Neal last fall. The employee formalized the complaint with Human Resources in early 2021. Allegations also included disrespectful and demeaning behavior, which created a hostile work environment based on gender and violations of City Council rules. It says throughout the investigation, headed by the city's Human Resources Director, an independent consultant, 6 women raised concerns or complained about unprofessional communications and conduct by Neal. This is Russ Neal, the Akron City Councilman. Some people just generationally, they just don't understand. Like, the world has changed. You can't disrespect people of any gender. You just have to slow down and listen. You know, you need to be on receive as well as transmit. You can't just like steam through life anymore without kind of looking around and seeing who's around you and what their needs are and what they're feeling and have some empathy for other people. You can't do that anymore because there will be consequences now. And for years, men got away with this behavior. Just slow it down. Like, think. There's always a victim, you know. Like, if your behavior is gun-ho, if you're one of those people who just, like, is kind of self-absorbed, and there's always a victim. You need to be conscious of who the victim might be when you're saying it. or before you say it. Excuse me, Hudson Mayor. Fishing shanties could cause rise in prostitution, is the headline on the Akron Beacon Journal. It says a discussion on whether to allow ice fishing at a park took an unexpected turn at Tuesday's Hudson City Council meeting, when the mayor suggested setting up ice shanties could lead to prostitution. After several minutes of discussion about whether ice fishing should be permitted at a city park, Mayor Craig Schubert said he wanted to raise some data points for council to consider. He suggested councils discuss the issue with the fire chief before making a final decision, and then turned his attention to whether ice shanties would be allowed. Does someone come back next year and say, I want an ice shanty on Hudson Springs Park for X amount of time? What is an ice shanty? I mean, is it me that is like... Have you any idea what an ice shanty is? I mean, it sounds like a lollipop. What is an ice shanty? It must be something to do with fishing, to allow... Is it like a hut, or is it like a somewhere where you can, like, fish in the ice? I don't know. With protection, I don't know. If you know what a nice shanty is, maybe Sonny can help me. He's had the answers to everything else so far, so hit me up, please. Could really do with you right now. What is it? Oh, it's a portable shed. Right, so I kind of guessed right. It's like a little hut, yeah. And they're saying that it could lead to prostitution. So what? Who wants to have sex in a little hut on the ice? I mean, let's be honest. You know, a nice warm bed would be nice. You know, maybe a mirror on the ceiling or something. But you don't want to go in an ice shanty. What's he talking about? What's his problem, this guy? Unlivable is the main headline on the front of the Akron Beacon Journal. I have to say, the Akron Beacon Journal is providing us with quite a lot of good fodder this morning. A mother complained she had to bathe her 4-year-old in the kitchen sink because of mold in her bathtub. A tenant recounted a story of contracting an illness from a rodent infestation that left her homeless. Another expressed her hardships living in a building designed for older people and people with disabilities, with elevators that kept breaking down. These were among the stories shared at last week's City Council public comment session. Renters from 4 complexes serving marginalised groups, including low-income residents, chronically homeless, older adults and people with disabilities, gathered to share their experiences. It is a true act against humanity, even when it comes to the living spaces of people living in Akron. I mean, I've said time and time again on this show that in many of the newspapers in the US and in the US media, the poor, like the truly poor, and I'm not talking about people who are homeless, I'm talking about people who have homes and are living in poverty, they barely get a mention. And this poor woman is having to bath her child in a kitchen sink. The photograph of her. Her name's Edmikia Minter. She's president of the Erickson Apartments Tenant Union. She looks over the buildings in the apartment complex where residents have frequent complaints about living conditions. There does seem to be this attitude, and maybe it's, conservatives and their desire to conserve and not spend. And they're like, if people are paying rent, you need to provide something in return for the rent. You know what I mean? Something really good in return for the rent. Like an apartment with a roof that doesn't leak, or an apartment with walls that don't have mold on them, or a bathroom that is usable. That's my biggest fear, really, is that there are so many unscrupulous landlords who are just very happy to take the rent money every month, and they'll come after you if you don't pay it. But if there's mold or if there's sanitation issues or problems, then they're not interested. Gallo has joined us. Welcome, Gallo. It's your first time with the show. Welcome to Backchannel. Okay, let's move on with the newspapers. To Las Vegas now, and the Las Vegas Sun. Let's see what they've got going on here. They lead with, and they're off. Masks fly off casino patrons as governor lifts Nevada's mandate. Yes, that's right. Vegas is now like mask-free. It's kind of crazy. Laurie Blaine, it says, was at Paris, Las Vegas on Thursday for a convention when word came that Nevada had lifted its mask mandate. Almost immediately, people started to rip off their face coverings. It was a fascinating, she said, almost like a graduation where they throw their caps up in the air. Word quickly spread along the Las Vegas Strip that Governor Steve Sisolak had declared an immediate end to Nevada's indoor masking requirements, citing a rapid decline in coronavirus cases in the state. In casinos, guests started to remove their masks and employees expressed relief they no longer had to police the mandate. Blackjack dealers and cocktail waitresses at some strip resorts quickly ditched their face coverings. I mean, are they crazy? Just because the governor says that you don't have to wear one, just keep wearing it. Why don't you wait until like the numbers come down, or wait until the CDC says it's okay, or wait until the Fauci's happy about it. I think we're living in a time now where people are just very anti-government. You know, they don't want to be told what to do by the government. They feel like all of their freedom and liberty has been eradicated or eroded, and they just want to have some control. And that's why there is extremist behavior going on. And the reality is that we need government. You know, without government, trust me, you'll see what it's like once the government falls. You'll see what it's like when there is no governance. And you'll very quickly you'll be like, oh, you know, when your sidewalks start to crack, or when your street lighting goes out and no one is there to fix it and you're living in darkness, or if there's a power outage and it doesn't get restored for days or weeks, or there's no trash being collected in the streets. That's actually the first sign of when government falls. You know, when there's a government shutdown. Do you remember when there's always a government shutdown here? It's a theatrical event that happens once a year in America. And obviously the trash doesn't get collected. It piles up in the street and it stinks. That's what it'll be like. Sunny agrees. I have been to Las Vegas. I actually got married in Las Vegas by Elvis Presley, the king himself. I had my wedding in Las Vegas. So I have been there, yes. I did the whole traditional... In fact, my wedding was pretty much like... It was actually like The Hangover. You know, like there was like a random person tied up in the trunk of the rental car. There was like a tiger in the apartment. You know, I had the whole experience. Have you been to Vegas, Carla? Have you witnessed it? I mean, it's quite something. It's quite something. But I'll be honest with you. I think it's rather cool. I think it's rather brilliant. You know, you don't want to go for more than a few days. But there's nowhere else like it, not on this earth. Just makes me laugh even thinking about Las Vegas. I'm like, wow. That place really exists. It's amazing. And then here's the ironic story on the front of the Las Vegas Sun, which kind of is directly underneath the section "Masks Fly Off," casino patrons and governor lifts Nevada mandate. Right, directly below that story is another story that says officials say the pandemic is not over. It says even though Governor Steve Sisolak lifted Nevada's mask mandate on Thursday, the governor and state and national health experts continue to point out the fight against COVID is far from over. I want to be clear, the emergency is not over, he said at a news conference after his announcement. I mean, he did it at the same conference. In one breath, he said the mask mandate is now over, take your masks off, and then the very next sentence is, the pandemic is not over, we're still getting far too many cases, far too many hospitalizations, and far too many deaths. It's like you couldn't make this up. The Southern Nevada Health District continues to urge residents to be vigilant against COVID through mask wearing, vaccinations, including boosters if eligible, and staying home if sick. While there is no longer a mask mandate in place, masks are proven effective at protecting people and lowering the risk of disease transmission. The health district said in a statement, "We encourage people to wear well-fitting masks in public indoor places for additional protection." I mean, it's just beggars belief that these two things are being announced at the same time. But that's Vegas. That's the contradiction that is Las Vegas. That's why we love Las Vegas. Right? Is that why we love Las Vegas or not? Because Las Vegas is all about winning and losing. Mainly losing. Las Vegas is about great highs and great lows. Las Vegas is about being mask-free and catching coronavirus. That's the contradiction, that's the dichotomy, that's the yin and the yang that makes up the Vegas experience. You know? Cheap hotel rooms, because they're all subsidized in the hope that you will end up going, to their casinos. And then, I don't know. I just feel like we are self-perpetuating these problems right now. We are creating more problems for ourselves. This pandemic will not end. It will not end, I'm telling you. I'm trying to kind of move the light behind me here. I've got the light on a stand, and I've realized that it's just not bright enough. I need to get a much brighter light back here. I'm trying to light up the background, and there's nothing. It's just like a black void. I mean, I kind of like it, don't you? Do you like the black void? I need to change my outfit. I'm going to wear like a brightly coloured Christmas sweatshirt tomorrow. Like a Christmas jumper, hot woolly Christmas jumper in this very hot space. Why not? Maybe that's the way to go. Is that the way to go? I don't know. I can't seem to get any kind of decent effect of this light back. I'm trying to kind of create something. Oh, that's a little bit better. There's a little bit more. It's just it's just trying to create a little bit of depth of field. Just a little depth of field. That's all I'm asking for. So anything else on the front of the Las Vegas Sun? Super Bowl winner against the spread. It says 18 Super Bowl matchups were more likely than Rams versus Bengals when the NFL playoffs started a month, according to the betting odds. I don't know what any of that means. I can't read that out loud. Oh, yes, this is interesting. This is a law, it's an analysis that says the 1887 law that has put American democracy at risk. It says the Electoral Count Act is both a legal monstrosity and a fascinating puzzle. Intended to settle disputes about how America chooses its presidents, the 135-year-old law has arguably done the opposite. Last year, its poorly written and ambiguous text tempted Donald Trump to try to overturn the victory of Joe Biden using a fringe legal theory that his own vice president rejected. Scholars say the law remains a ticking time bomb, and with Trump on their minds, members of Congress in both parties now agree that fixing it before the 2024 election is a matter of national urgency. It says if people don't trust elections as a fair way to transition power, then what are you left with? Said Senator Angus King from Maine. He's an independent. He's been leading the reform efforts. I would argue that January 6 is a harbinger. The Election Count Act's origins are, as King put it, unsavory. More than a decade elapsed between the disputed election that inspired it and its passage in 1887, under the bargain that ended that dispute. The Republican candidate, Rutherford B. Hayes, agreed to withdraw federal troops from the occupied South, effectively ending Reconstruction and starting the Jim Crow era. The law itself is a morass of archaic and confusing language. One especially baffling sentence is Section 15, which lays out what's meant to happen when Congress counts the vote on the 6th of January. It's 275 words long. It contains 21 commas and 2 semicolons. Well, I kind of like punctuation. I'm a big fan of punctuation. Comma. It's more of a semicolon there, isn't it? So there we go. That's the Las Vegas Sun. Okay, let's see what's next. Terry just joined us. Hi, Terry. Welcome. We've done that one. Las Vegas Sun. Buffalo News. Have I done the Buffalo News? Yes, I did the Buffalo News ages ago. Sorry, I'm in the whole wrong section. Let's go to the Florida Times-Union. Here we go. School districts may lose funds, it says. Counties that impose mask mandates targeted. Oh, no. Here we go. The Florida House would strip $200 million from a dozen counties where school boards defied Governor Ron DeSantis by requiring students and staff to wear masks, another punishing strike in a clash that consumed much of last fall. The move came from State Representative Randy Fine, the House Education budget writer. Fine played a central role in promoting claims last fall by parents of a Brevard County student with Down syndrome who said their child was abused by teachers when a mask was tied to her face. The claim coursed through conservative media, was seized on by a DeSantis spokeswoman, and the girl's father repeated the story on Fox News' Tucker Carlson show. Law enforcement investigators later dismissed the case, concluding it was built around a staged photos and false statements. Now, with Florida's school mask fight receding into history, and as states, including New York, Connecticut, and California, scale back far stricter policies, Fine on Wednesday fired another shot. Wow. This is what I was saying earlier about the fact that a lot of these protests that are these like rhetorical protests, they're actually not based on any fact. They're just based on a rumor or an opinion that got published somewhere, as like on a Facebook post or something. And then from that point, it got picked up by the right-wing media, and then it becomes a story, and then people repeat the story, and then before you know it, this is like a whole thing. And this is what has happened with the whole freedom thing, my freedom, my mask, my freedom, vaccine, freedom. It's also what happened with the kind of attitude towards the election, and that the election was fraudulent. Like, there was never any evidence of election fraud, ever. The whole thing was an opinion that was given credence by the media. And this is why it's so important that the media maintains its impartiality. This is why it's essential that the media does not present an opinion on something, because an opinion fundamentally is something that hasn't happened yet. In contrast, there's also a story on the front of the newspaper, the Florida Times-Union, saying DeSantis rebuffed by Florida justices. Yes, the Supreme Court in Florida rejected Ron DeSantis' request for an advisory opinion on whether the state could recast the boundaries of a North Florida congressional district to where it may no longer elect a black representative. The 5-0 ruling by justices, 3 of them appointed by DeSantis, marks I just love that, marks a setback in the governor's effort to guide the Florida legislature's once-a-decade redistricting. DeSantis broke with tradition and submitted his own map, which dramatically reshaped the Tallahassee to Jacksonville district seen as likely to elect a black lawmaker, and which has been represented the past 6 years by U.S. Representative Al Lawson. DeSantis' proposed map also reduces the black voting population of the district, held by Orlando U.S. Representative Val Demings, to where black voters may not be able to elect a candidate of their choice. I mean, this is fascism. That's what this is. This is pure and simple fascism. And I feel like people really, really have forgotten so much of like what's gone before, you know? They really have. You may have a view on this, you know? You may have a view on this. I would like to hear your view if you have a view on this. Let's say hi to a few people. Aha just joined us. And Sonny said, did you just say someone passed a law to keep black folk out of office? Oh, yes, you did. Yeah, no, they didn't pass the law. It was Ron DeSantis trying to get the district redrawn to prevent a black congressperson from taking office, basically. But it's not really about the congressperson. It's about the black people in that area having representation, you know? Yeah, I know. I hear you. Okay, let's see what else we have here. I think I'd quite like to get into some of our subjects. So what have we got left? Oh, we got one more. The Orlando Sentinel. Let's go there, finally. It says, court rejects DeSantis' request. The same story, different newspaper. Florida Supreme Court will not give opinion on state redistricting. U.S. inflation jumps to 40-year high. I mean, they should just rewrite that story. World inflation jumps to 40-year high. There is not a single country, developed country, that doesn't have insanely high inflation. It's just the way it is. This is a pandemic that is around the whole world, not exclusive to America. This is inflation around the whole world, not exclusive to America. Looking for chicken wings, expect to pay an arm and a leg. Very good. It says football fans looking to munch on chicken wings this Super Bowl Sunday should prepare for prices that have taken flight over the past year. This is apparently the cost of, 1.42 billion chicken wings are going to be eaten. I don't know the history of why the wing has become the Super Bowl food. I really do not like chicken wings. I mean, I don't eat chicken, but when I did eat chicken, I just never liked chicken wings. It's disgusting. Think about what you're doing. You're eating the wing of a chicken. It's not even got much meat on it. It's just like a... Ugh. Don't eat that. Eat chicken breast or thigh or leg, but wings... It's disgusting. What you like is the sugar that's in the coating that they're all in and the dip that you dip them in. That's what you like. The chicken wing is irrelevant. Also on the front of the Orlando Sentinel, Astra Space launches from Space Coast, but rocket last seen spinning in space. What? Astra Space successfully launched a rocket on Thursday for the first time from the Space Coast, but the mission was a failure as the upper stage was last seen spinning in space, with its ultimate fate unclear. They said, we experienced an issue in today's flight. Well, it sounds like it. I'm deeply sorry we're not able to deliver our customers' payloads. I'm with the team looking at data and we'll provide more info as soon as we can. So listen, after launch attempts were thwarted by Space Force's busted radar equipment last weekend, Space Force. I still can't believe Space Force is still an actual thing. And then a last-second scrub on Monday because of a communications issue with its Rocket 3 spacecraft. The Alameda, California-based company saw no issues leading up to a 3 p.m. liftoff from Cape Canaveral Space Station, or Space Force Station, they're calling it now. Space Force? I mean, just stop it with the Space Force. You know how Space Force came about, don't you? It was Donald Trump misspoke. He was meant to say Air Force, and he accidentally said Space Force, and then he was like, you can see the video of where it first happened. Then he was like, because he's obsessed with branding. He's a good marketeer. And then he's like, Space Force. And then he backtracks, pretending that he meant to say Space Force. And then he kind of, on the spot, manages to spend billions of dollars on new uniforms and a whole new kind of Space Force concept. And he literally thought of it on the spot. And then he goes, yeah, it's a Space Force. I like the sound of that. That's what we had with the last guy. And then they stole the Star Trek logo. Do you remember that? Space Force logo is the Star Trek logo. Oh, that's right. Yes, they had camouflage uniforms. Like they're going to be able to hide behind like bushes in space. That'll protect them. The other great thing was that Netflix did a TV show with Steve Carell called Space Force. A whole season called Space Force, with Steve Carell as the head of the Space Force. The whole thing was like a send-up, and it's brilliant. It's very, very funny. It didn't do very well, unfortunately, because obviously half the country were against it. But, it really, really made me laugh. And basically it starts with this guy who's just like been told that Space Force is the new thing and he's in charge of it. And he's like, oh, really? And they don't do anything. That's the other thing about Space Force, is that they don't do anything. They don't have any missions. So there's this whole department where there's just nothing happening. So those are the newspapers for you on this Friday. Thank you very much for all of your, involvement. Sonny says Space Force was a brilliant show. I love Steve Carell. Sonny said I cooked chicken wings in the air fryer last night. A little bit of salt and pepper and garlic. He says toss them in a little Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce and caramelize them for a minute. Perfection. I have to tell you, the Sweet Baby Ray's might be the greatest barbecue sauce ever made. It's basically just brown sugar, right? It is delicious, and it's always on special. Like, you can always get it heavily discounted. Well, what's that? What, Sweet Baby Ray's? It's the greatest sauce ever invented, Carla. It's the greatest sauce. It's basically a barbecue sauce, It's just barbecue sauce, but it's just particularly sweet and particularly delicious. Should we talk a little for a moment about Marjorie Taylor Greene? You can get it in Tesco's, Sweet Baby Ray's. Oh, it's delicious. If you're a barbecue sauce fan, I'm telling you, you can't go wrong. I used to, when I used to cook ribs on the grill, I used to cover it in Sweet Baby Ray's before I grilled it, the raw ribs, and then I would grill it in the Sweet Baby Ray's, and then I would then dip it in the Sweet Baby Ray's afterwards. Do you know something? I'm thinking I might eat pork ribs. I mean, I'm vegan, but maybe I'll just maybe I'll just make an exception for pork ribs. They are so delicious. I really do miss them. Anyway, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's a piece of work. She's a piece of work. The thing, she came out, we were talking about when she referred to the Gestapo as gazpacho a couple of days ago. And that went viral, obviously. So now the young Russian figure skater, Kamila Valieva, did indeed test positive for a banned heart drug, it was confirmed today. But in news that prompted wave of sympathy for the 15-year-old skating sensation, it emerged that her doping sample sat in a Swedish laboratory for 6 weeks and was only finally analysed the day after she led Russia to victory in the team event at the Beijing Winter Olympics. Where does this story connect with Marjorie Taylor Greene? I don't think it does. Let me just see what's happening here. What's happening here? The Daily Beast as a website is impossible to read from. It really is. It's quite something. Yes, here we go. The problem is I use the reader and the reader is not working. I always use the reader. Anyone use the reader on a website? You can click a button next to the left of your URL, which is like a little picture of a paper, and it's called Reader View. And you click on that, and it basically brings up a version of the article, but not with any advertising or pictures or anything. It just brings up the words. So this is a story in the Daily Beast about Marjorie Taylor Greene. It says she's on a hot streak of stupidity, the new abnormal. The TNA crew breaks down the GOP's race to the bottom. This is, they say, I don't actually believe that Congress is that dumb. No, I'm kidding, I actually do. Says the co-host of this conversation. This is a very difficult article to read from because it's actually a transcription of like an interview. It sounds like. They say when Marjorie Taylor Greene accuses Nancy Pelosi of leading the gazpacho police, she's just a moron, albeit one cunning enough to turn around and promptly raise money off of her own stupidity. I mean, I get the sense with Marjorie Taylor Greene that she's become like a bit of a pastiche of herself, you know, like a bit of a joke, because she does kind of come out with these random things all the time. And the reality is that she believes them. She genuinely believes what she's saying. She has a lot of conviction. And I think that's the entire Republican movement has become this. It's like, it doesn't matter that what we're saying, it doesn't make any sense. But if we say it with enough gumption, that people will actually believe it's a thing. Do you know what I mean? Sonny says, I'm not a vegan, but I go meatless when I can, and I try to avoid pork more than other meats. Yeah, maybe I need to lay off the pork. Maybe you're right. Okay, let's move on to something else, because this story is impossible to read from, this Daily Beast story. Any articles in the Daily Beast are just impossible to sight read, because they're just, the way they lay it all out, it's like got its own thing going on, you know? So I think we'll jump onto this vaccine mandate story, because we've only got like 20 minutes left. And we've got quite a lot to get through, because I also want to talk about something else a little bit later. It says 3,000 teachers, firefighters, and other New York City workers face losing their jobs on Friday after failing to get vaccinated against coronavirus by the city's deadline. New York City Mayor Eric Adams said he would not change the rules, despite the city facing many days of protest since his predecessor announced the policy last year. More than 95% of staff have complained. Opponents say the requirement violates their freedom. More protests are planned for Friday, and opponents have filed numerous legal challenges, arguing, for example, that rules violate protections against the free practice of religion. Really? Really? It says, though the U.S. Supreme Court last month struck down a national policy requiring vaccination or weekly tests for staff of large businesses, it has declined to take a stance against more localized requirements. New York City Mayor Eric Adams told a news conference it was not that the city was firing employees, but that people are quitting. Many of the unvaccinated have been on unpaid leave since the mandate went into effect last autumn. New York City, the epicenter of the pandemic when it first struck in 2020, is not alone among U.S. cities in insisting that public employees get the jabs, which experts say is the safest way to protect against infection. So, I mean, I think the biggest issue here, I mentioned it earlier, but it's worth saying again, is this argument about freedom, isn't it? You know, this is the fundamental argument. It's like, what constitutes your freedom? What is your freedom? And is your freedom in some way compromised by a pandemic, or should we accept that our freedom becomes compromised in a pandemic? And the problem is that, you know, the pandemic happened the same year as an election year. That's really was the problem here in America. And consequently, it became politicized. And when Donald Trump politicized it, remember he said that the pandemic, you know, the coronavirus, it's the Democrats' new hoax. That's what he said. The problem is when the President of the United States politicizes it, it becomes politicized in South America, Brazil, Bolsonaro, Canada. It's a huge right-wing movement in Canada who have jumped on that. Obviously, then it spreads to Europe, and it becomes a divisive issue. Now, if the President of the United States comes at it with a very different attitude from the very beginning, then you are probably going to have more time to manage the messaging. And it's been said this week that the messaging was the biggest screw-up, really, of the whole, you know, of COVID. So we should look at this together, you know, we should really look at this together and get our heads around this, because I recognize that we're not going to see the end of the pandemic unless there is a fusion of the left and the right on this issue, you know? it's genuinely, it's going to become a thing. Nobody wants to wear a mask. Of course they don't. But as long as the pandemic is in existence, we all have to do our bit. And I recognize that we're having this conversation again and again and again. And here we are 2 years on from the start of the pandemic, and we're still having this conversation. And so Eric Adams, who's the new mayor of New York, he defended the city's decision to issue termination notices to unvaccinated city workers on Friday in light of protests and backlash from municipal worker groups. But my point is that it's a problem that the authorities have created themselves because they haven't tackled the messaging. And Democrats' messaging, generally, Eric Adams is a Democrat, is terrible. They put out a video on Twitter the other day, the Democrats, about something, Biden and jobs or something. It was a positive thing, but the video was so badly edited. It was literally like they don't realize how social media has moved on now. And these little vignettes, they can be brilliant if you have good people making them. More than 24 unions this week sued over the February 11 vaccine deadline for municipal workers to get vaccinated, including the Police Benevolent Association, the United Federation of Teachers, and the Uniformed Fire Officers Association. Jobs are at risk for around 3,000 workers who took unpaid leave instead of getting vaccinated when the city mandate took effect in October, as well as around 1,000 recent hires who haven't submitted documentation of their second shots. So how do we qualify what is freedom? Like, what is it? And why is freedom seems to be more associated with the right, and yet democracy is associated with the left? Because this is what we're dealing with now, isn't it? You don't hear Democrats crying, "I want my freedom," and yet they advocate for democracy. And yet you have the people on the right who are not advocating for democracy. They're very happy to back this fake election that they claim is a fraudulent election, and yet they're arguing that they want their freedom. When freedom is democracy, when democracy is the free vote. The atom seems to have been split. And it's ridiculous. Because actually everyone's on the same side. It's just emotions have got in the way. As US officials attempt to boost the national 64% vaccination rate, they've tried to require that large workforces protect themselves. The Biden administration ordered all federal workers to get shots, but a judge blocked the rule in January. Other major cities have also required employees to get vaccinated, including Chicago and San Diego. The former mayor Bill de Blasio required workers in private businesses to get at least one dose of the vaccine. Adams said on Friday, he said he wanted to keep that mandate in place to avoid confusion over ever-changing COVID requirements and maintain the trust of city residents. But it's the unions that are taking legal action. 89% of NYPD employees have received at least one dose. The Department of Education's single-dose vaccination rate is 96%. But what's a single dose? What is a single dose? We need 3 shots now to be fully vaccinated against Omicron. Three shots. Not 1. Not 2. 3 shots. A reminder that Backchannel has a growing list of shows, including Haley and Allison Live, waking you up in the morning, with lots of laughs and their 1-star cinema review. Live Every Day with Liv Harrison from Texas, with the little things in life being celebrated and quite a lot of coffee involved. And also the charming and funny Hal Rudnick. He's your pal Hal. He'll be here in 10 minutes. So, stick around for Hal. I'm Anthony Davis. I think in the last 10 minutes we're going to look at Black History Month, because we do this at the end of every program this month as we talk and celebrate and commemorate and respect the people through history who have done the most for Black history. And so today we're looking at Mae Jemison. When the Space Shuttle Endeavour blasted off on its second mission, it carried the first African-American woman into space. But Mae Jemison is more than an astronaut. She's also a physician, Peace Corps volunteer, teacher, and founder and president of 2 technology companies. So I thought we would take a look at this remarkable woman and get our heads around the fact that, there's a lot to discover if we just make the effort to go looking. She was born in Decatur, Alabama, 17th of October 1956. Her full name is Mae Carol Jemison. She moved to Chicago at the age of 3 and considers the city her hometown. The youngest of 3 children, born to a maintenance worker and an elementary school teacher, she had a fascination with all things science from a very early age. Oh, Jeremy just joined us. Hello, Jeremy. And Juice. And Anna. Sunny says, today it seems like emotions and opinions are seen as more important than fact and reality. Sunny, you're so right. This is what we're dealing with right now. Let's go back to Mae Jemison. Once after receiving an infection, she performed an extended experiment on... hang on, this doesn't make any sense. Let me just find out what's going on here, because I've just realised that this is like it's cutting out some of the language. It says she did well in high school. She attended Stanford University. Oh, that's interesting. She attended Stanford University on scholarship by the age of 16. She attained her Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering as a Bachelor of Arts in African and African American Studies. She went on to earn her doctorate in medicine from the Cornell University in 1981. And after working as a general practitioner, Jemison served 2.5 years as a volunteer in the Peace Corps, spending time in the African countries of Sierra Leone and Liberia. In addition to English, she speaks Russian, Japanese, and Swahili. I mean, doesn't it make you, like, as a human, feel completely ineffectual? And it's almost like we are capable of so much as individuals. We can do so much. We have so many skills if we just put our minds to it. And Mae Jemison can do it. She flew on the Space Shuttle Endeavour in September 1992, the first black woman to travel into space. She speaks 3 languages. She's like, oh, I'll do a little bit of time, a couple of years as a general practitioner. Just a little bit of medicine. And the rest of us are sitting here thinking, am I going to have a donut or a croissant or both combined? A cronut. That's where it's at now. We can't decide what to have on our coffee. We get upset when someone tells us to wear a mask. The people that are getting upset being told to wear a mask don't do anything. They don't do anything compared to Mae Jemison, obviously, who appears to have done everything. So she applied to NASA's astronaut program, feeling that more opportunities had opened up. As time went on, the explosion of the Challenger shuttle put a hold on applicants, but in 1987, she became one of the 15 candidates selected out of more than 2,000 people, and after a year of training, she became the first female African-American astronaut. On September 12, 1992, Mae Jemison became the first African-American woman in space, when the Space Shuttle Endeavour carried her and 6 other astronauts on 126 orbits around the Earth. A mission specialist, Jemison was a co-investigator of 2 bone cell research experiments, one of 43 scientific investigations that were done on mission STS-47. The shuttle landed safely at Kennedy Space Center in Florida on the 20th of September, and over the course of her only space voyage, Jemison logged 190 hours, 30 minutes, and 23 seconds in space. She left NASA in 1993 and went on to teach at Dartmouth College. She also founded her own company, the Jemison Group, which seeks to encourage a love of science in students and bring advanced technology to schools around the world. She's a strong advocate for science and established an international science camp for high school students. She's also taken leadership of the 100-year Starship program, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency has. And the program works to make human space travel beyond the solar system a reality within the next century, but in a way that includes and benefits as many people on Earth as possible. And there's a couple of lovely quotes from her. One of them is, the one thing I've done throughout my life is to do the best job I can and to be me. And isn't that like a lesson to us all? If we could just be comfortable being ourselves. She also said, never be limited by other people's limited imaginations. If you adopt their attitudes, then the possibility won't exist because you will have already shut it out. You can hear other people's wisdom, but you've got to reevaluate the world for yourself. Anyway, you should look her up. Her name's Mae Jemison. M-A-E, and then Jemison is J-E-M-I-S-O-N. She's an astronaut. It's funny, isn't it, when you're kids, and people say to children, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they're like, an astronaut. But like, to be an actual astronaut, to say, yeah, I am an astronaut. I mean, there's something magical about that, isn't there? To like want to be an astronaut and then to be an astronaut. And we were discussing this the other day when we were looking at that amazing woman who went up on the Jeff Bezos spaceship. It's like a life of wanting to be an astronaut. Because, there are some professions, like a stand-up comedian, for example, that you can just say you want to be it. You go and do one open mic night with no training or experience. You can be as terrible as you like. And when people say, what do? You can say, I'm a stand-up comedian. Because you've done it once. The fact that you were crap is irrelevant. And that's the thing about different professions, is that some professions, like astronaut, require a certain amount of skill to be able to do. You can't just, be a crap astronaut. I love the idea. It's actually a really good idea for, a TV show, isn't it? Like, really bad astronauts. A bunch of astronauts that just really are not very good at their jobs. I suppose that's what Space Force is. I do recommend Space Force. It's the show about Space Force. It's on Netflix. It just makes me laugh, really, that we are capable as humans of so much. We really have the capacity to be anything that we want to be. But opportunity, luck, obviously plays a big part. But most importantly, hard work. And I've always said, when people say, oh, you've got to be in the right place at the right time, I would say, yeah, but why don't you try putting yourself in that right place? Because the right time you can't really do anything about. But the right place you can do something about. And so if you want to be an astronaut, go get a job as a cleaner in the astronaut place. We put yourself in the right place. The right time will come if you work hard. But the right place is essential. Jemison now acts as a science ambassador and speaks about the need to democratize access to technology for the future of humanity. She said, I think it's so vitally important that all people in this world are involved in the process of discovery. There you go. Well, thank you to you. You've discovered Backchannel, and it's been a pleasure serving you today. I'll come back tomorrow. We'll do it again. Thank you to Sunny, who says I took an undergraduate class, so I could technically say I've gone to college. Very good. Well done. Thank you, Jeremy, for joining us as well. Everybody that's been on the show, Juice and Anna and Evelyn and Aha and Katie and Milo and Terry and Gallo and Stacy, of course, and Brandy and Bryn and Steve and Zuo and Francine and Harry and Stacy and Michael and Emily and Finn. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. I'll come back on Monday and we'll do it again. I guess we can debrief on the Super Bowl on Monday. And also thank you to Riyadh for helping us out at the beginning. Thank you to Carla for bringing things home. And stick around for your pal Hal. He's next here on Backchannel. Have a really great weekend. Bye for now.